Today, Sony has announced two of the world's smallest and lightest full-frame cameras with viewfinders, the Sony A7C II and the A7CR. Both are updated models of the original Sony A7C, which was launched nearly 3 years ago in September 2020, so it was time for an update. Now, I only have the Sony A7CR with me, we're actually filming on it right now, but it's pretty similar to the A7C II. So in this video, I'll give you a breakdown of both cameras with an emphasis on the A7CR, with lots of sample photos and videos from that camera. Now, Sony sent me the A7CR to test out on loan, but I don't get to keep it. They are also not paying me to say anything, and they did not review this video before it went live. So all thoughts and opinions and photos and video samples here are my own. Now, both the A7C II and the A7CR are nearly identical in size and appearance. They both weigh roughly 515 grams, and they have a vintage kind of rangefinder look to them, which I really like. The biggest difference between these two cameras is the sensor size. The A7C II is like a more compact version of the Sony A7 IV with a 33 megapixel sensor and 759-point phase detection autofocus, covering 94% of the image area. It can also shoot up to 10 frames per second in mechanical or electronic shutter. Meanwhile, the A7CR is a smaller version of the Sony A7R V with a 61 megapixel sensor. These file sizes are pretty big, so be prepared for that. But if you like to crop into your images, then this is the camera for you. It has 693-point phase detection autofocus, covering 79% of the image area, and you can shoot up to 8 frames per second in mechanical shutter or 7 frames per second in electronic shutter. Both cameras also have a designated AI processing unit, which is found in the A7R V but not in the A7 IV. Sony cameras already have top-of-the-line autofocus, but this AI processing unit helps these cameras go above and beyond when it comes to subject recognition. These cameras have the ability to see and predict human movement, such as what direction the eyes are going to go in based on how the body is moving. They will even keep autofocus locked when a subject goes around an object. I found these autofocus tests to work really well on my toddler, who to me has pretty unpredictable movement when he's playing. Object recognition has also expanded in the cameras, so you can now choose between human, animal, bird, insect, car and train, and airplane. In animal focus mode, it does a really great job of focusing on an animal even when it can't see the eyes. And I had a really fun time testing out the airplane tracking mode when I was shooting the Blue Angels. Besides helping with autofocus, the AI unit also helps you get 20% more reliable exposure and more accurate colors. By the way, the A7CR in particular has 15 plus stops of dynamic range and a really high expandable ISO of 102,400. But perhaps my favorite feature on this camera is one that also came out with some of the newer Sony cameras, like the ZV-E1, and that is AI-based auto-framing for movies. When enabled, the camera automatically senses a human in the shot, and it zooms in and crops and pans with you like a real camera operator would. Another key improvement is the completely updated 7-step 5-axis IBIS, or built-in stabilization, which is a step up from the original A7C and also the IBIS that's in my A7 IV. This means it has really good active stabilization, which I see at play when I'm handhold shooting both photos and videos. Internally, both cameras can also shoot up to 4K 60 frames per second, 422 10-bit video. And the camera can get a little bit warm to the touch, but I haven't experienced any overheating. Slow-mo is still capped at 120 frames per second recording in 1080p. You can't shoot 4K slow-mo in this camera, but there is now an in-camera time-lapse feature. Physically, both the A7C II and the CR both have very-angle flip-out LCD displays with touchscreen interfaces. They also have a dedicated dial to go between photo, video, and slow and quick modes, and a front dial that can be custom assigned to a feature of your choosing. Both cameras have a pretty deep grip to house the included Z battery, but both cameras now have an optional extension grip, which is ideal for those of you with larger hands. Not me. That still gives you full access to the battery and a 1/4-20 tripod mount in the bottom. The OLED EVF on both cameras has also been slightly upgraded. Its brightness is now on par with the A7R V. But overall, I find the EVF quality to be one of the downsides of these cameras. I'll talk more about the downsides at the end of this video. In terms of my experience of shooting with these cameras, I have to first tell you about the Sony A7 IV, which I bought the day that it was announced, and I've been using it as my main camera to shoot client photos and videos. And I can easily say that it's the best hybrid camera that I've ever ever owned. When I got my hands on the A7CR, I immediately fell in love with it. The button and the menu layout is very similar to my A7 IV, so it was really easy to get started shooting with it. But I especially loved its smaller form factor. If you've been following my channel for a while, then you know that I love compact cameras that easily fit into my main travel camera bag. And the A7CR definitely checks that box, even when I have my bigger telephoto zoom lens attached. You may also know that I've been scaling back on my f2.8 lens collection, and I ended up doing a majority of my testing of the A7CR with two lenses, the 28 to 60mm kit lens and the 24 to 240mm f3.5 to 6.3. Now, even with these non-G Master lenses, I found that the autofocus was snappy and accurate, and the image quality was sharp and on point. So you can take cheaper lenses and use it with this camera and still get really good results. Overall, I've been treating the A7CR like my main camera for the past few weeks, and there are only a few things about it that I would consider downsides. First of all, the viewfinder, like I mentioned earlier. It's smaller and it has less resolution compared to my A7 IV, so it's a little bit harder for me to use in terms of gauging my shot as I'm trying to take it. I also really miss the joystick on the back for selecting my focus point, but I will say that over time I've gotten used to using the wheel and the touchscreen on the A7CR instead. The A7CR also only has one SD card slot instead of two, which is a bummer because I like to record simultaneously to two cards when I'm shooting paid client shoots. Now, some folks with bigger hands might find the smaller size of the A7CR to be an issue, but personally, I find that it fits my hands better, and I didn't even end up using that grip most of the time. Finally, let's talk price. Full-frame cameras are not cheap, and these cameras are no exception. The A7C II comes in at $2199.99, so basically $2,200. And the A7CR is basically $3,000, making it more expensive than my A7 IV. So who are these cameras for? If you're looking for the smallest full-frame 4K camera, and you've been eyeing either the A7 III or the A7 IV, or perhaps the A7R5, then I think the A7C II or the A7CR are the ones that you might want to focus on. For most of you, the A7C II is probably best with its lower price point and its lower megapixel count. The A7CR is mainly for professionals who really need the higher megapixels. But honestly, as a professional photographer and video creator, I would prefer the A7C II for myself. Am I going to buy it? I'm seriously considering it, but my A7 IV came out in 2021, so there's a very good chance that the A7 V will come out next year. So